We're less than 2 hours away from President Biden's second State of the Union address, a live look at Capitol Hill, where members are hosting their guests and getting ready for that speech. And we're happy to invite in one of our local members of Congress to talk about the speech and the current state of political affairs in this divided Congress, Republican Ben Cline of Virginia, joining us live from Statuary Hall inside of the Capitol. Cline represents Virginia's 6th district, which is in western Virginia, as you can see from this map, stretching from Winchester in Frederick County down through the I-81 corridor through the Shenandoah Valley and south to Roanoke. So, Congressman, great to see you. A lot of ground I'd like to cover here, so let's get rolling. Just within the past half hour, the White House emailed media outlets some excerpts from the president's speech. Here's one, and I'd like to get your reaction. He says, "To my Republican friends, if we could work together in the last Congress, there's no reason we can't work together in this new Congress." So, Congressman Cline, are you ready and willing to work with this president?
We're ready to work with this president if he actually follows up his words with actions. During the last Congress, we saw a handful of Republicans get on board some of these bills that Democrats pushed through, but from start to finish, they were Democrat bills and we were ignored when it came time to provide our input. So I'm hoping there'll be more of a back and forth now that Republicans control the House and we can have a greater conversation about the challenges facing this country.
You know, we certainly expect the president to point to what he sees as some of his bipartisan successes and how that can be a roadmap for the next 2 years. We asked your congressional neighbor, Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, about that just within the past hour. I'd like to play some sound from her and then get you to react on the back end. Let's listen.
The infrastructure bill as an example that Congress really can work, that we can identify the needs across a district such as the 7th, where we've got rural communities that need broadband connectivity. We've got lots of rivers to cross and bridges that are in disrepair. And indeed, we can come together, we can pass legislation in a bipartisan way and send it to the president's desk.
So did that bill work, and is it a good roadmap?
Well, unfortunately, the infrastructure bill only provided 10% of the funds to infrastructure. When I say infrastructure, I mean roads and bridges. What 90% of the bill went for were Green New Deal projects and only served to push the deficit even higher. Now we're running trillion-dollar deficits. The debt is $32 trillion. This president and the Democrats, quite frankly, have no answer on how we're going to address that. And we are at the table, ready to talk to this president. So I'm hopeful that the president comes to the table, because right now families are hurting. We've got families at the grocery store looking at higher prices, at the gas pump. You know, we've got farmers with input costs in my district, fertilizer costs going up, and so families are struggling, and we need real solutions. We need this president to follow up his words tonight with real actions.
Well, let's talk about the deficit, Congressman. Let's talk about the debt limit. Where do you stand on that? What are you willing to give up? What do you want the president to give up to get to an agreement?
Well, what we've seen over the last several years under complete Democrat control is just unfettered spending, boondoggles of multi-trillion dollars that are going toward things that are, woke education programs. You've got Green New Deal programs. You've got foreign aid that is not being followed up with accountable tracking of the dollars. And so we've got a lot of work to do. The House is ready to do it. So I'm serving on the Appropriations and the Budget Committee. We're going to pass a budget that actually balances, and we're going to get down to business of being proper stewards of our taxpayer dollars, of our constituents.
But we've got to get to a debt limit agreement before we pass a budget. So how will those two things go hand in hand? We've got to get this debt limit crisis resolved before sometime in June, right?
Absolutely. You know, the Treasury Department is taking extraordinary measures to make sure that we protect the full faith and credit of the United States, and we are committed to doing that. We are not going to allow this debt crisis to develop and unfold into anything that's going to threaten the full faith and credit of the United States. And so we're ready to sit down with the president and figure out how we're going to do that. Just a my way or the highway approach that the president's been advocating, that's not a real solution. It's not the way that the founders set up this government. They set up the executive not as a king, but as someone that is going to work with the Congress to execute the bills that Congress passes. So we're ready to pass legislation that's bipartisan through a Republican House and a Democrat Senate that addresses our debt crisis, but addresses the fundamentals behind the debt crisis, the spending that is driving up inflation, that is really creating problems for families across this country.
All right, Congressman Ben Cline, Republican from Western Virginia in the 6th District. Appreciate your time tonight, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.